Another one is a movie I happen to be in this movie, but in a very small part. And that movie is The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. That is, for my money, a perfect film. I love that movie. One of the best comedies in the 70s, in my opinion.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
I am Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people who make and who love the movies. And we are really delighted to have as our guest on today's show, actor and activist Ed Begley Jr. Ed, thanks for joining us.
Chris, thanks so much for having me on. Dean, it's a pleasure to meet you as well.
Yeah, really, and great. I didn't want to tip you off, but I will mention before we start just the slightest of family connections. My dad was in the late 50s, early 60s. He was the head of new talent at Fox Studios. He was the one who groomed young actors, new talent, for hopefully a career on Fox in Fox films, as these were all people under contract. And he was assigned when he came on as his secretary, a lovely woman named Helen Jordan.
Great.
And Helen, it turns out, married your dad in 1963, I think.
That is correct. My dear stepmother, Helen, we lost her a few years ago. She moved to Nevada. She lived there in State Line, Nevada. And she had a child with my father, Maureen, who was alive until just a few years ago. And she's an angel from heaven. She had Down syndrome, and she was born in 1964. But my dad dated a woman who worked at Fox by the name of Helen Denver. Helen Jordan was her married name, and she was divorced. And they wound up having a child together and getting married. So she was part of my life for many, many years. And sadly, we lost her a few years ago. But she was also the sister of.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you that too, because when I would go to the studio, my brothers and sisters and I would go to the studio on like holidays it was like our own private Disneyland, because that was a time where Fox Studios had its back lot before it was sold off to become Century City. And it was our own private playland. And I remember going to the studio, and Helen assigned us a chaperone, a young man who was trying to break into TV, her younger brother, Bob Denver.
Bob Denver,
your step uncle.
Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
Yep. That's so great.
And Bob would take us around and this was before Dobie.
Right.
This was
before Dobie Gillis.
Right before he landed the part of Maynard G. Krebs' work as Dobie Gillis.
He was part of the Del Rey Players in Marina Del Rey. He was part of that acting troupe, and he was a wannabe actor. And his sister worked at the studios, and gave him a certain cachet into the business, and it paid off one way or another. He got that interview for Dobie Gillis for the part of Maynard G. Krebs, landed the part, and then went on to Gilligan's Island and worked for many years on that.
Yeah. So I remember Bob sans goatee before Dobie.
Right.
I'll just throw in that for people in my generation, young men in my generation, I think there were two kinds of people: those who wanted to be Dobie Gillis and those who wanted to be Maynard. And those of us who wanted to be Maynard, we became the hippies a few years later.
Right. I think I was one of those people too. I wanted to be Maynard G. Krebs.
Yeah. I was thinking, I don't know if you've seen that show in a long time. I haven't seen it in years, but I'm guessing that, like The Honeymooners and Lucy, that's a show that really holds up well after 60 years.
Dobie Gillis holds up very well. And I'll tell you why I know that. I saw it a few scant years ago, maybe 5 years ago, fairly recently, because a dear friend of mine is Sheila Kuehl. She's our LA County supervisor here, and she was a state senator and many other positions in politics. But she was an actress who played, was it Gilda? I think
Zelda,
that was her name.
Zelda Gilroy.
Zelda,
yes.
That's right. She was in love with Dobie Gillis, and
she did the nose scrunch.
Yes, she did. But she was a very talented young lady, and we ran as part of a fundraiser for her. We ran one of the episodes of Dobie Gillis. Somebody got their hands on it, and it was very, very good. Some of those shows don't hold up, as you say. This show did. It was very funny and very smart.
So lastly, I'll mention, and just one night must have been 1963 or so, your stepmom and dad came over to dinner at our house in Tarzana. So I got to meet your dad, which was a big thrill, because I'd love to talk with you about him, if we may, for a minute. One of the great actors, one of my favorites. And
yes,
when I see his work, 12 Angry Men, Sweet Bird of Youth, even I saw Hang 'em High last week, which I'd never seen, with Clint Eastwood. And it's really kind of a dud. But your dad is great because he's always believable.
Hang him, then hang him again. Lines in that. He was great actor, great presence, booming voice. I was on many occasions terrified of him because he had that voice, and he was quite a large presence. Even though I wound up being taller than him, as I got older into my teenage years, I started to grow a little taller than he. He was a powerful man, and I had great respect for him for many good reasons. He was quite an actor, quite a dad.
And you started young in film work yourself, 20 years old or so. Did he encourage or dissuade you from getting into the career?
He was very careful not to. He had encouraged, to a large degree, made it possible for my much older brother, Tom, to be in the business. They had like a vaudeville act together. And at some point, my much older brother, Tom, resented that. And he said to me, I didn't want to be in that vaudeville act. You made me do it. I wanted to be playing stickball with my friends, and you made me go and do those things. I didn't want to do it. So he said, never again. When my sister and I both wanted to be, my sister Bunny and I, her real name is Aileen, we wanted to be actors. He went, no, I'm not doing that again. You want to be actors, you go do it on your own. But I had a bad experience in the past with your brother, Tom. And my brother, Tom, turned out to actually be my cousin. That's a very complicated story I'll tell you about sometime. But just the Begley family is full of surprises. But I also learned who my mother was fairly late in life. When I was 16, I went to get my driver's license, and there was blank under my mother's name. And I went, Dad, why is there no name under my mother's name? I said, well, Amanda wasn't your mother. Head explode. Who was my mother? Sandy's your mother. Double explosion, because this woman that I used to get Christmas gifts every year, I'd meet her at Grand Central Station, sometimes on Easter, sometimes Valentine's Day. I'd see this woman that I was crazy about. Something about this woman, I just loved her. That was actually our mother. This family friend turned out to be our mother. My stepmother, who died when I was 7, was not our mother.
Well, but you're lucky you had 3 moms, because then Helen was
exactly. Very good. I had 3 moms. That's the right way to look at it. That's the way I started looking at things years ago. Look at the positive. For years, I thought, I'm not my dad. Why do people compare me to him? And I want to be my own man. I want to be this and that. Shut up. This is going to open doors for you. You're Ed Begley's son. I don't care if you're Liza Minnelli, Rob Reiner, whoever the hell you are. You're the son of, the daughter of. People are going to, number one, remember your name. That's a big plus as an actor. Number 2, there's something comfortable to talk about in the job interview. You want to be an actor, you have to go through a job interview, stage, screen, whatever it is. And you're sitting there. I worked with your dad on Lux Playhouse, and we did a show together for Philco Playhouse, and I loved your dad. He was great. Top of page 8, Eddie. Good luck to you. And that's the way to be. It made, if you would allow it to be, a big plus, and made the job interview more comfortable because people liked my dad.
Did there come a point where maybe in the early days you thought your success was the result of your father's reputation, but at a point you recognized or felt confident or secure in your own skill and ability that it was all your own? It was your own.
I chose not to think about it. I had to put blinders on to not see it. But first of all, I got one major thing wrong. I thought, well, that looks easy, what my dad does. Get me a job. I want a series regular job on Gunsmoke, a Wagon Train. Dad, can you get that for me? Can I be on Perry Mason on a weekly basis? I just thought it was that easy. Of course, he didn't have the power to do that. And more importantly, I didn't have the skills to do that. I had no training. Can you imagine the son of a plumber wanted just, I'll ride in the truck today, and you weld the pipe together, the copper, you do something with it with a flame, I think. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I went on job interviews. How did that happen? It happened because my dad or somebody, my stepmother, somebody set it up. I didn't know how to get an agent to submit me for something. And I didn't get any work. Finally, at age 17, I started to take acting lessons. I went to classes to learn how to do the job. And then I got a job on My 3 Sons. But also, let's be clear, how did I get the job on My 3 Sons? I mean, my dad must have called somebody up because I went in on an interview for it. how did, I didn't think it through. I didn't realize how lucky I was to be born the son of Ed Begley. A few years after that, I figured it out, and I've lived in a world of gratitude ever since.
That's great. And, even at this age, I'm now starting to see even a little bit of your dad's face in your face.
I didn't see it for years, but I started seeing it a few years ago myself. I thought, I don't look anything like him. I look like some distant, Scandinavian relative on my mother's side. She was tall and blonde, but I don't really look like him. But of course, I do look like him, and I see it quite regularly in my face, and have for a few decades now.
Yeah, but you're right. You go back to your early stuff. I was watching some clips last night from Saint Elsewhere, and
I love that show. I was so happy to get that job.
Yeah. Actually, I'd like to ask about that, because it was such a groundbreaking show with all the ensemble work and the mix of drama and comedy, and the the kind of breaking of what had become the cliches of the heroic doctor, and that these were human beings. And I would imagine that was a really fantastic training ground for the work that you went on to do.
It was fortunately, I didn't get fired from anything in those early years, but I kind of learned on the job. I didn't really have much. I'd done some training before I got that first job, and a little bit after that, but I still didn't know quite what I was doing. Fortunately, I went to a woman called Peggy Fury for a while. She had a wonderful workshop called the Loft Studio, with her husband built a trailer on La Brea there in Hollywood. Went to her. I went to Stella Adler. I studied with a bunch of different people that were very, very good acting teachers. And I started to learn things. But I learned on the job. And finally, by the time St. Elsewhere came around, I'd learned enough to kind of be present, be in the moment, do some research, and try to behave like a real person that I had seen on this planet, not some fictional thing of a doctor who came to you and knocked on your door. You didn't come to your appointment yesterday, Phyllis. What's wrong? Are you all right? Can I come in? I don't recall a doctor ever doing that with me, but that's the way Marcus Welby and these doctors were. They'd come knock on the door. Kevin, why didn't you come to your appointment? We're concerned about you. It was like, it was all fairly bogus. Right. St. Elsewhere, a lot of people died. In fact, they might have gone a little bit too far. It was like a charnel house, that hospital. Not a lot of people lived. We killed a lot more people than the ones that lived. So, but it was a good show. We had David Morse and Denzel Washington and Bill Daniels and Bonnie Bartlett and Christina Pickles and, Ed Flanders. My God, we had such a cast. It was
Howie Mandel.
Howie Mandel, my dear friend for all these years. And it was a great cast, great people, great directors, Mark Tinker. Great producer, Bruce Paltrow. Just a wonderful time every day. And I was smart enough at that point, Dean, because I'd been at that point 15 years in the business, to enjoy every single minute of it, to not look ahead. What's my job after this? Look back and what was I doing last week or last year? To be right in the present moment, to live in the now and enjoy every minute in that hallway in the hospital and in the fake elevator, the fake stairwell, and make it real and make it joyous. And it was a great experience for me.
Yeah, the show really does feel like a lot of the people were in that spirit, like they were having fun doing it.
Yes, they were. John Macias, Tom Fontana, great writers, just amazing directors. I loved every minute of it. And then fortunately went on to do other things after that were also, quite pleasurable to do in quality productions as well. I've been very lucky to still be working at this point. My God, it's 54 years I've been working as an actor. How lucky am I to have 54 years in the storm door industry or selling used cars? You're going to be grateful, I hope, for 54 years in any field, right?
Yeah, and you're busy. You're just I looked at your IMDb page. You're working all the time.
I am. I'm very, very lucky.
Yeah.
At this point, you pretty much get to pick and choose what,
Yeah, I don't have to work at this point. Screen Actors Guild has a very nice pension plan, as does the sister union. Used to be separate, called AFTRA. They've merged years ago, but the pension plans were separate. So between that and Social Security, I don't have to work, but I like to work. And so I get to do things like Young Sheldon. I've done that show for a while. Been on Better Call Saul for a few seasons there. I just did Mr. Mayor with my friend Ted Danson. I did Arrested Development for years. You know, I just did this wonderful show called Bless This Mess with Pam Grier and, you know, Dax Shepard and Lake Bell. So I'm just blessed to still be working and doing quality shows.
That's
lucky.
quality stuff. I love Better Call Saul. You mentioned that, and I forgot you were in that. Remind me, were you a bank president or?
I play a lawyer at this Santa Fe kind of feel-good law firm.
Oh,
kind of a touchy-feely guy, a very, you know, crunchy granola kind of a law partner. It's a wonderful show. I'm a fan of the show. I love seeing it. I'm a fan of just watching it.
You early on in 1984, you got hooked up with a very special crew of talented people: Christopher Guest, Eugene Levy, Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, and you were in This Is Spinal Tap, and you've been in, I think, 3 of their films subsequently: A Mighty Wind, Best in Show, For Your Consideration. I think of that group like next to the Beatles, probably like one of the best exclusive clubs to have entered and been part of. Can you talk a little bit about that, sharing that experience, being with those folks, and how you got brought in and what that's been like?
I knew some of the National Lampoon folks there back in the very early 70s. And I also knew a very wonderful and talented young lady named Alyssa Guest. So I got to meet Chris Guest, and I was a huge fan of his. He did something called the Radio Dinner album for the National Lampoon. National Lampoon's Radio Dinner album, a comedy album. It was very funny, very sophisticated, very funny. And he was a big part of that. Chris Guest was. So I met him and got to know him. And then he was kind enough, and my friend Harry Shearer and Michael McKean were kind enough to include me, and Rob Reiner kind enough to include me. And This Is Spinal Tap, as you say. We actually recorded that old footage back in 1980 or 81, I think we did that. And they set it aside for a while. They're trying to raise money to get the funds to do the movie. Then they completed a few years later. I think it might have come out in 83 or 84, as you say. And then I didn't work again with them for a while. I worked with Chris Guest on St. Elsewhere. He was an actor for several episodes on that. But then I worked with them. They came out with a wonderful movie called Waiting for Guffman that I was not in, but I was just blown away by it. I thought it was so wonderful and just clever. Rob had directed This Is Spinal Tap, and Chris directed Waiting for Guffman. And so I went, oh boy, wouldn't it be great if one day I got a call from Chris, if he's going, ring, what's this? Hello, Ed, it's Chris. Well, I'm going to do another show. It's called Best in Show, and I want you to be in. Oh my God, I was doing backflips. So I was in Best in Show, and somehow I've managed to be in every one of Chris's projects since. And I just had lunch with him yesterday. I'm a huge fan of his to this day. He's a wonderful human being and a huge talent. So I'm blessed to know Christopher Guest, that's for certain.
You know, your performance in Best in Show, there's something going on there. I don't know quite how to put my finger on it, but you know, with all those wacky characters, the wacky dog fanciers, you as the hotel manager, I guess you're about as close as there is to a straight man in that film, but it's not quite. There's such a kind of a delicate awareness of the absurdity of the situations you're in that I just love watching your scenes in that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
You're being very kind, and I'll embrace what you're saying. It's a great compliment, but my challenge was to be, just as you say, a straight man, and to stand across the desk from Eugene Levy and Catherine Hara trying to check in, but the credit card doesn't work. And that's the sum total of what we're told in the 25-page outline that Eugene Levy and Chris Guest did. It says, Jerry and Cookie Fleck try to check into the hotel, the credit card doesn't work. That's it, period, end of sentence. So then the rest is improv, and it's incumbent upon the three of us to do whatever we come up with. So I'm just trying to keep a stone face and to not ruin everything, by laughing, because it's Eugene and Catherine, two comedy gods and goddess individuals. And so I did just try to be the straight man and do that. But then, as you suggest correctly, then I go into the little storage room and I go a little off the rails with the cleaning products and what have you, and some of the absurdity of that. and then trying to get them a place to sleep for the night, Eugene and Catherine. And then in comes Michael McKean and Michael Higgins, those two quite flamboyant in that scene with the two gay gentlemen trying to check into the hotel. And that was also a lot of fun. But you think about it, one of the best performances in it for me too was the great Jim Pittock. Jim Pittock in that thing is the straight man to Fred Willard. And Fred Willard is going on about all this crazy stuff.
Those
and
the announcers.
The announcers for the show, right?
The announcers for the dog show.
Yeah.
And they're sitting there, and Jim Pittock was so good. This is my reaction after seeing the footage. I didn't have any scenes with Jim Pittock or Fred Willard, so I didn't know that was going to happen. I see this incredible stuff that Fred's doing, and then I see this guy, Jim Pittock, this poor guy, I'm thinking, because they clearly got a real guy, some British guy who is a commentator to do it, because he was so uncomfortable and real, and like, what is this guy talking about when Fred is going off? I thought he was a real guy that they got who's a commentator, and they just threw Fred into the mix. That's how talented Jim Pittock is. And talk about a great straight man. He is that and much more. He's a wonderful guy. And he wound up being he wound up being Chris's partner in the writing of the treatments in the future. He did For Your Consideration and Mascots and Family Tree and all those shows. He did those with Chris, because Eugene was busy with Schitt's Creek and what have you and things like that. So Jim Pittock took over and has done those shows with Chris, and it's just a joy to behold.
Now, did Best in Show have a lot of pages like that where it was just outlined and you guys were ad-libbing?
25 page. No dialogue that I remember to speak of. A few of the subsequent ones did. They had, and he says, blah, 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 blah. Occasionally there's a line, but it's mostly just, exposition. They try to check in the hotel, the credit card doesn't work. And that's basically it's stuff like that. And then you take it from there.
And is that how all of Chris Guest's films were done and Rob Reiner's Spinal Tap?
Yeah, it starts like that. But then you have a keen eye like Rob's in Spinal Tap, and Chris Guest's keen eye and ear in these wonderful movies he's done. You do the first rehearsal and Chris says, that was fine, but here's what I need to position in what you're saying, and the thing that you do last, move that to the second position, jumble them around and do that, and make sure you end with blah blah blah. He takes what you've done, the kind of ingredients you've laid out there, and forms them into a more palatable meal, and you do the second take and it's better, and the third take it's better, and then you're done. It's rare that we go past 3 takes. Very rare.
Wow.
Something's really got to go wrong with the camera, the sound, or one of us really messing up a line but how do you mess up your lines? Because there are no lines to memorize. It's all you kind of making it up as you go. So it's kind of hard to mess up the lines, but it's a real treat. It's a great way to work.
Sounds tremendously fun and or terrifying.
Right. And then I get to do it also with the great, on Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, with the great Larry David and his cast and group. It's a similar version of that. Sometimes it's a little more scripted on Larry's show, but often not. You just get a basic premise and you go from there. And I just feel blessed to work with these kinds of people at this stage in my life.
Really great collaborators and top of their game. Curb Your Enthusiasm is genius. You lost a couple of collaborators. I know Bob Einstein from Curb Your Enthusiasm and Fred Willard recently passed away, but so talented. Is Chris Guest planning another?
Not at this point. If he has plans for it, he hasn't mentioned them to me. I never bring it up though. Whenever I get the phone call, it's one to forget, but I don't want to needle him. Whenever he and Jim or he or anyone comes up with some new idea for a show, and I get that call, it's great. But he likes to, take it easy. He still works, of course, but he loves to go to, he loves to go fishing and do the things he likes to do. And he's certainly entitled to work or not work at this point of his life. I'm a huge fan.
Me too. Corky St. Clair and Guffman is one of the great,
great characters. Yeah. Brilliant.
Really brilliant. Do you enjoy watching yourself on screen? A lot of actors don't. Are you okay with that?
I'm totally fine with it. And I'm very, very fair. When it's good, like Best in Show, I thought was good, or Mighty Wind, I thought that was good. Not just the movie, but I like what I did. when I see something like that, I'm very happy with it. But occasionally I see a show like a TV show I did, a pilot I did here or there. I won't mention any names. The things I do, I go, wow, what was I doing there? What was that about? But that's fortunately kind of rare. I generally like what I do, not because I'm so clever, not because of my talent. It's often good people like Chris Guest who extract something out of me that I hadn't thought of. I years ago learned that I'm playing for an audience of one. When I work with somebody like Larry David or Chris Guest, people of that ilk, and the shows I do like Young Sheldon, they're very talented people. And I just submit myself to whatever the director and the showrunner want me to do. And they always have good ideas. I bring in hopefully some good ideas for the first rehearsal, but they say, that was very good, but why don't you try this? It occurs to me instantly that it's much better than what I thought of. It always is. It really is. So I go with what the director or the showrunner want me to do. And you're smart to do that. And it turns out very good with the class of people I'm working with. It always turns out good.
That's great. So Ed, you are also, I think it's safe to say, the film industry's preeminent environmental activist, and you have been since
you're Greta Thunberg before Greta Thunberg was
right.
Was Falk.
Yeah, no, you were that way before it was cool.
You're very kind to mention her name and mine in the same sentence, but I'll tell you, what she has done, I could never dream of doing. We were stuck in low gear in the environmental movement before she came on the scene. We've made some, I must be fair, there's been some accomplishments. You know, we've have 4 times the cars in LA since 1970, millions more people, but a fraction of the smog. We were able to accomplish some things like making the air cleaner in LA, making the Cuyahoga River less toxic so it doesn't catch fire. We've done some things, but when she came along, I think it's really motivated the young people in the world to do more, motivated me to do more. I did what I did. I live in a LEED platinum home, but I thought I got to do more. Let me get rid of this thing that I thought I needed that can be less polluting. And let me do this. And let me really stop flying. I flew rarely before Greta came on the scene, but now I don't fly at all. I just don't. I have a car that has a very good range, an electric car. And I drive, you know, when I work in a city far away, I just drive there in an electric car with no pollution. And so I'm very deeply affected by her. And I'm glad that I did what I did starting in 1970. And you're very kind to mention it in that way. And I'm proud of what we've accomplished here in the States as well since 1970. We've done a good deal, but we need to do more.
You know, you mentioned how much cleaner the air is here in LA. Like you, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley. We were actually chatting before we started rolling here. Ed and I,
we went to Van Nuys High together.
We went to Van Nuys High School together. And growing up, when we first, I moved out here when I was 6 years old. We moved from Long Island. And I used to ask myself, why do they call this a valley, San Fernando Valley? A valley is supposed to be surrounded by mountains, and you could not see the mountains, except a couple, maybe 2-3 days of the year when the Santa Ana winds would blow through, and suddenly there were the mountains, and then they would disappear for another 362 days behind this brown blanket of smog that we grew up breathing.
Dean, I've never heard anybody else describe it that same way, which is the way I describe it. I've said that same thing many times. Valley, why do they call it a valley? You had to be up to Moore Park or Ventura Boulevard to see the Santa Monica Mountains. You had to be up to Rinaldi or San Fernando Mission Road to see those hills. You had to be up to, foothills to see the Verdugo Hills. Had to be all the way to Topanga Canyon to see the Simi Hills. You couldn't see any hills. Why is it called a valley? It was just crazy. Right. And it hurt your lungs. Forget about running around in a play yard as a kid. If you just sat on a bench and sat there, you were wheezing from the smog many days. We had an incinerator in our backyard to burn our trash. This in a thermal inversion layer valley with a thermal inversion lid on the top of the pot. And we were burning our trash in our backyard. Not in some scofflaw fashion. We were asked by the city to burn our trash in our backyard. Every yard had an incinerator. You put your tin cans out, your glass out. They took that away in a truck, but the rest you burned. And back then we had some plastic, even we're burning plastics in our backyard. Could you imagine?
And you
Crazy.
remember when Mayor Sam Yorty ran for re-election,
I can't believe you're going to say this.
his major point in his platform was that the Los Angeles housewives should not have to recycle. They should not have to separate their trash and recycle it.
I'm the mayor. I'm Mayor Sam Yorty, the mayor of Los Angeles, and I just want to tell you, we're not supposed to be trash people, pick it up trash or what have you. If I'm elected mayor, I'm going to make sure you don't have to do that anymore. Sam
Right.
Yorty for mayor. I remember it like it was. I had the same exact reaction when
Right.
that happened. You know,
Right.
they're taking all this stuff and recycling it, and his winning platform was, we don't want to do that anymore. And also, I just realized I've been tailing you for a while. I moved from Long Island to here. I was born here, but I went to grade school in Merrick, Long Island. Even though I was born here, came out here every summer to California, but I was in Merrick. What part of Long Island were you from?
Westbury.
That's funny.
And
Merrick
Chris?
is not so far from Westbury.
And Chris?
Oh, well, I was born in Brooklyn, and my first 3 years in Westbury too. That's where I first met Dean. Long before I have any memory of him, he would babysit me when I was 2 or 3 years old.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Parents
My
were
God.
family friends.
Right. Ed, I do want to mention, I want to credit you with your authentic pronunciation of Los Angeles in the same. And I recently read there's a whole linguistic history, all this documentation from these scholars of the pronunciation of the name of our fair city and how that happened and why, and the influence of the changing pronunciation of Mexican Spanish, and then
Right.
and other people coming out from the Midwest. And I can remember when we grew up, it was about 50-50, I think, of people who said Los Angeles and people who said Los Angeles.
Right. And Arnold Schwarzenegger took some flack for saying California. He was actually pronouncing it correctly.
Right.
And also there's Cannon Drive, they call it. It's Canyon Drive, really, because it has a tilde over it.
Right.
It should be pronounced Canyon, but nobody does. I've been pronouncing it Cannon my whole life, so I go with the flow. I go with the pack. But people don't always pronounce things right with the correct pronunciation.
But we actually have two different streets that are spelled the same. One is Rodeo, famous Rodeo Drive, and the other is Rodeo.
That's right. That's right. That's funny.
And then there's La Cañada, which some people pronounce La Canada.
That's right.
So where were we?
Well,
environmental activism.
Oh, yes. What I would like to just comment, you're taking this with humility, but you really were a pioneer. And I know it didn't come without some ridicule in the early days of being, made fun of with the electric car and all that. But you really, I think, you led by example. And now more recently with your line of products. Can you share with us a little bit about that and how you got into that and how you've developed the Begley's Earth Responsible products?
Yeah, I started really in 1970 with environmental activism. I became a vegetarian. I started riding my bike. I always rode my bike. I had a paper route, what have you. I rode my bike, but I rode it even more for transportation. I took public transportation, which I always took in New York and here, but I took it even more because of that first Earth Day. I just got involved. And I also started using vinegar and water to clean up instead of, ammonia-based stuff. And I used baking soda instead of common cleanser. And it worked pretty good. But then I realized there had to be another way to clean better than vinegar without that leftover vinegar smell and the baking soda. There had to be a more aggressive cleaner that worked better. And I sought out formulas. And finally, I found this guy that had a formula. I met him at a vegan restaurant in LA. We bottled it for a while called Begley's Best. And it was a fine company and fine products. But I got busy with acting and I didn't have time to ship it out. I was shipping it out of my garage. Okay, Chris, it was crazy. I had all this stuff stocked up in my garage. I'm trying to be an actor and ship products back in 2004 and 5. And I just got too busy. So I wound up folding up that company. And then I met this guy, Mark Cunningham from Lab Clean, and he had EPA Design for the Environment certification for his green products. So I vetted all his products and I partnered with him. He said, I'll do all the shipping. I'll make sure the bottler does it, and I'll handle all the online sales, which I was doing myself and getting people's credit card numbers and entering them and all this stuff. I turned it all over to the wonderful company called Lab Clean,
And now we have Begley's Earth Responsible products. Just go to Amazon and type in Begley Cleaning or just Begley. You can go to Google search even Begley Cleaning and you'll see it. And they're very good products. They clean every bit as good as Formula 409 or some other aggressive cleaning product, but they're entirely non-toxic, which is something you want. You got pets licking their paws and kids crawling around on all fours, little ones and what have you, putting their hands in their mouth. You don't want to have some toxic floor cleaner in your house. And we're also asking people to hermetically seal up their house to make them more energy efficient. And now you're going to have toxic cleaning products under the sink and used around your kitchen and your bathroom. You don't want that. So Begley's Earth Responsible products are very good. Amazon and elsewhere, give them a try. Thank you for bringing that up, Chris.
Oh yeah, no, you've set such a wonderful example over the years, and it's I think it's our joy to just share that with our audience, and we're very strong on that. Yeah. I'm interested to know too, Dean and I think I mentioned we're longtime meditation practitioners and teachers, and we're always interested in exploring a little bit the inner lives of our guests. I don't know if you have a meditation or faith-based or martial arts informed kind of practice or anything that you do to kind of just develop yourself spiritually, internally.
I do, and I'm glad you mentioned that. It's one of the more important discoveries in my life. In 1972, I came upon a book, a friend recommended a book called This Is It by an author by the name of Alan Watts, a very enlightened man, in my opinion, Alan Watts. And if you just were walking past a bookstore and you were of an open frame of mind and you saw the cover, you might get it. This is it, Chris. Right now, this moment with you, here it comes, this one is all there is. That's all you really get. And now this one again, if you want to stop it and realize it here, this is all, it's not what happened yesterday. It's not what happens tomorrow. I make plans for the future. I make sure my rent is paid and I have food in the refrigerator. I'm not saying I do everything right now. You make plans, that's fine. But to live in the moment as much as you can, to be here, engage with you, and really look in your eyes and see you and hear you and experience this actually perfect moment where I have everything that I need. I'm never going to get everything I want. I gave that up years ago, but I do always get everything I need. And I'm getting right now because I'm, thanks to your good question, back in the moment, enjoying this moment. Here it comes, that one. It's perfect.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's how you live. And from my understanding, and you'll of course know more about this than I do, that's how you do acting.
That's the best thing, to be in the moment. And whatever happens, somebody drops something, you pick it up, and Marlon Brando on the waterfront, he's walking along with Eva Marie Saint, what have you, and she drops her glove. Fortunately, she doesn't crack. He certainly doesn't, because he's in the moment. He stops and picks it up, and he puts the glove on. He continues to talk to her, and they finish up the scene. And it's a beautiful moment because it happened. It's real. It's something that happened. And that's what happens also, not to compare our work with the great Eva Marie Saint and Brando, but in those improv movies, somebody does something that you weren't at all expecting, and then the other character reacts, and you can see they're clearly in the moment. When I start spouting Yiddish to the brilliant Bob Balaban, he's shocked, because I'm like this, obviously Goyish guy suddenly speaking Yiddish to him to ingratiate myself with him, and he's like looking at me like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And it's a very real moment for Bob, and I stay with it. I don't break character either. And it's something that happens, very spontaneously and what have you. And that's what's always good in movies, these great moments that you see that De Niro does and Meryl Streep does and Joaquin Phoenix does, Daniel Day-Lewis does, and these great actors among us, that do these incredible things. I don't know that I'm capable of that kind of work, those people I just mentioned. I know I'm not, but I can do my level of craftsmanship and do it well, and just try to be in the moment and really hear people and see them and see what's happening and react to whatever it is that just occurred like a real person would. And that's what's always the most compelling thing to watch, of course.
Well, no one does Ed Begley Jr. like you do.
You're very kind.
You play the part really well. You were made for this part.
Thank you.
And Ed, by the way, you just a moment ago cited my favorite example of that, which is in On the Waterfront, because, I mean, this is the kind of thing that you could not plan. When Brando puts on Eva Marie Saint's little white glove, it solves the whole dramatic problem of the film, which is how this kind of brutal boxer character and this delicate little, nun in training, how are they romantically going to mesh? How do they come? And that kind of happens in this very kind of bizarre and yet beautiful, delicate, sensual way when he puts on her glove.
Exactly. And Kazan to have the presence of mind to not yell cut, to let it play out, but also to realize that it was pure gold and keep it in the final edit of the movie. That's the gift of Kazan, that he knew how precious that was and how good that was. Like it's clearly a real thing happening, in Streetcar Named Desire, when he clears off the table. You want me to clear your place too? And that's a very real moment. It was probably felt very dangerous on the set when Marlon did that, but that's the kind of real stuff that is always very, very compelling to watch.
Yeah. When Woody Allen and Annie Hall is asking about the cocaine, and then he sneezes after being told, oh yeah, this is $500 worth of something, he sneezes, and that was a real unplanned sneeze.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's great. The other great one is in The Graduate, when Dustin Hoffman has his first tryst in the hotel room with Mrs. Robinson, and he sits very awkwardly with her next to her on the bed, and very awkwardly reaches his hand over to put it on her breast. And at that exact moment, Anne Bancroft, with this brilliant classic timing, pretends to notice a spot on her dress and starts rubbing it like in a total kind of mom gesture.
Right. Oh God, I forgot that.
And it's so hilarious that Dustin Hoffman is about to break out laughing, but because of his stage training, he didn't want to do that. So he gets up and he puts his head down and he starts knocking the top of his head against the wall.
Right. Oh my God, you're right.
And again, like Kazan, Mike Nichols was brilliant enough to go, yeah, that's gold, keep it in.
Let it run. Yep, leave it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It's magic when it happens. We want to talk for a moment about a couple of your favorite films. Journey to the Center of the Earth is one of your favorite films. Is that correct? Is that what we were led?
That is correct.
Tell
us.
Come
out. That was like, I think 1961 or something, wasn't it?
59, I think.
59, yeah.
And that was James Mason, Pat Boone, Arlene Dahl.
Yes. Wonderful kids movie, as it turns out. It's absurd, of course. You can't go to the center of the earth. It's hot magma, what have you. It's a scientific impossibility, but we didn't know that as kids in 1959. We saw the movie, we're blown away by the special effects and the lizards made to look like dinosaurs and all of that, and the hot lava, that was sequestered to a certain part of the center of the earth. It was kind of funny. And all that stuff, we went out, we got on our camping gear, canteens and different things and backpacks, and we had shovels, we started digging in the backyard. We were going to dig to the center of the earth in our backyard. Unfortunately, some adults saw this work in progress and stopped it. We didn't know about, shoring up the walls of things when one digs a mine or a cave or a journey to the center of the earth. It would have probably fallen in on us. We would have been buried alive. But we were digging to the center of the earth after that movie. But it was one of those movies that came to the local theater there in Merrick, New York, to the Gables Theater. Back then, a movie was 25 cents. And we went again and again. We must have seen 3 or 4 times because it was just miraculous, that movie. The special effects were, by today's standard, many years standards, quite primitive. But for us, it was like, oh my gosh, unbelievable. We just gobsmacked by it. It was an amazing movie for a young person.
I remember going to one of the sound stages and they had all the set built out with the giant crystals and the prehistoric ferns. And it was like a kid's dream.
Wow. What a treat to be on the set of that and the dubbing stage for that. That's amazing.
It was fabulous. Share with us a little bit about a few of your other favorite films and why they're favorites and why they mean so much to you.
Chinatown is one of my favorites, and it makes the top 10 list of many, many people's favorites. It's just one of those perfect films. It's so
compelling. It's so well done. The artistry, visually, the acting. You know, Jack is so brilliant in it. Faye Dunaway is brilliant in it. Everybody, John Huston is brilliant in it. It's just an amazing movie, brilliantly written by Robert Towne and brilliantly directed by Roman, and just one of those perfect movies, and has important stuff too about water in LA and stuff like that. It's kind of woven into the thing. But the brilliant thing that Robert Towne does, he makes it a very high stakes thing, because it's really about murder, this thing, and weaves in the tale of water in LA into it. It's just a perfect film in every way. So that's one of my favorites. Another one is a movie I happen to be in this movie, but in a very small part. And that movie is The In-Laws with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. That is, for my money, a perfect film. I love that movie. One of the best comedies in the 70s, in my opinion. And I happen to be in it, but that's not why I like it.
I'm sorry, where are you in that film? I don't recall.
I play Barry Lutz. I'm a CIA operative in some South American country.
Oh, right.
And you may not recognize me because I have red hair in the movie, or did have red hair by a mishap. I was working on a movie with Kurt Russell, a TV movie directed by John Carpenter called Elvis, where he played Elvis Presley. Kurt Russell did. I played his drummer and had my hair darkened for that part. And the next morning when I finished on Elvis on Hollywood Boulevard shooting late, I was to get in a plane and go to shoot with Peter Falk and Alan Arkin the next morning. And I woke up, oh my God, in the mirror. Opie on, Andy Mayberry and the Andy Griffith Show. Suddenly I'm a redhead in the morning. And I can't, because they tried to get back to my blonde color, my real color, which is still pretty much blonde. And it didn't work. I was a redhead. So in that movie, I look quite different. I'm a redhead. But here's the interesting thing on that. When you buy the DVD today of it, I'm a blonde again. Somebody changed, as they do, changing the color,
Really?
The colorized movie. Somebody went, Ed Begley isn't a redhead. There's something wrong with this. Turn it back to blonde. And I'm a blonde now in the movie, The In-Laws.
Wow. What an incredible film to be a part of. That to me, that is right up there with the, got to be the 5-6 greatest film comedies ever.
And then another one, you think I'm picking my movies, I'm really not, but it's a perfect movie. We mentioned earlier, this is Spinal Tap. I have the smallest of parts. I have 0 lines, so I don't think it's an ego trip, me saying it's one of my favorites. I just play the drums in it. But Spinal Tap, I play the first drummer. I die in a bizarre gardening accident. But that is a perfect movie. This is Spinal Tap is, in my opinion, a perfect film.
Do you really play drums?
I do. I don't much anymore, but I did as a young man. I had a garage band and played at high schools and junior highs around the San Fernando Valley, and played one night at Don Drysdale's Dugout in 1969 for New Year's Eve. I was playing there, and Sonny and Cher came in. That was a big moment for our band when Sonny and Cher came in, and spent New Year's with them.
I remember well Don Drysdale's Dugout. The door handle was a baseball bat.
A bat. That's
number
right.
53,
right there
I
at
think.
Oxnard and Hazeltine.
Oxnard and Hazeltine.
Was he was number 53, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow, that's very good.
Well, you remember Koufax was 32, Drysdale, I think. I remember the uniform numbers.
But the running gag in Spinal Tap about the drummers spontaneously combusting and so forth,
right?
Because when I was growing up in the Valley, both of my brothers had bands that were always rehearsing in the garage, and it was always the freaking drummer that was the problem. There was always be going through drummers, and
right.
I don't know what it is, except that maybe people who are attracted to playing the drum are people who feel like they got to hit something.
Right, something about that. It was definitely. I had a certain amount of dysfunction in my life back when I was a drummer, so I won't oppose your theory there.
Okay. But you appear to have worked it out, because now you're the world's sweetest guy.
Well, I certainly have a much better life than I did back in the 60s and 70s. I certainly partied, is all I'll say, and fortunately lived to tell the tale.
Right.
Well, to have the In-Laws and Spinal Tap as part of your film legacy, that's pretty sweet. And I'll just mention the scene at the end of In-Laws where Alan Arkin and Peter Falk helicopter in and are lowered into, I don't know if you remember, into the wedding party?
Sure.
Dean?
Yes. And the wedding surprise is Carmen Dragon and the Paramus Philharmonic are playing the wedding march. And as Carmen Dragon raises the baton, if you look under his, I believe it's his left elbow, you'll see a young guy playing flute who looks a lot like me with long hair. That's my brother.
Oh my God. That's great.
Right.
6 degrees of whatever.
Yeah.
That's funny. We filmed that out in Eagle Rock or someplace like it, maybe Pasadena. I can't remember, somewhere like that.
Yeah. My brother Eric, who is a real musician, but in those days did a lot of sidelining where they had to hire real musicians to pretend that they were playing the music that was later dubbed in. And
someone told me, sorry, Dean, go ahead.
Yeah. He also was in something on everyone's list of the top 10 worst films ever made, Xanadu.
I was part of that myself. I was not on screen. I was part of a loop group that revoiced and put extra voices in that movie, Xanadu. I was part of Xanadu.
Congratulations.
Okay.
Or Xanadon't, as we should say.
Yeah. Sadly, lamentably, Gene Kelly's last film.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah.
A great talent. My God, did I love that man.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Someone told me you do a good Peter Falk imitation. Or would you share that with us if you're up to it?
I'm not sure I can do it anymore. I'll try. I haven't done it in quite a while.
Serpentine, Sheldon.
Could I ask you something? Could I ask you something for a moment? What was the name of the blonde guy that worked on the in-laws? What the hell was his name? His dad was an actor. I knew him from Hartford, Connecticut. I can't remember the son of a bitch's name. Who knows? I certainly don't know anymore.
Damn fine.
Wow.
Oh, you're very kind.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in like 7 years, but thank you.
Yeah. A lot of people get the voice, but you got the eyes.
Thank you so much.
The eye.
He was the best. He was a dear friend. We had the same birthday, September 16th, a few years apart, but September 16th, we get together and have our birthday together often. I was blessed, just very, very lucky to know Peter Falk for many, many years.
Really great. Well, Dean, any final?
I feel like we've had about as much fun as anyone can ask to have.
I'm so grateful to reconnect with you because we're really connected through the San Fernando Valley and much else. And I'd love to talk about being in the moment. That's very important stuff. And the philosophy of film and all of that. It's a gift to be with you and to be part of your show and keep spreading the word. And I'm really pleased to meet you both.
Really a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming.
Ed Begley, real delight to have you on. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.